Hey guys, it's Kevin in my review for the first movie of 2021, that of course being Shadow in the Cloud. So what Shadow in the Cloud is essentially about is it takes place around World War II times, and we center on this character known as Maud Garrett, this seemingly New Zealand woman who is this flight officer, and she travels onto this bomber with the intention of traveling with some kind of like top secret documents. We don't really know 100% of what she's doing, but basically she ends up stuck in the turret, and in doing so she starts to realize that the crew may not be alone. She starts to notice there might be this gremlin that is attacking the bomber that she's riding on, and she's prepared to find a way to get rid of this gremlin and figure out the intent behind it in any way that she really can, and hopefully try to save the day. Shadow in the Cloud overall, I was looking forward to this film. I mean, this seemed like a film that could be a lot of fun. It seemed like something that was a little bit different. You know, we get World War II films, but nothing really quite like this, and I felt like this would be a fun way to kick off 2021. Obviously, we don't have any like big theatrical releases, but this is kind of in place of that, and I was really hoping that this could be like a really fun film and something that, you know, could actually turn out pretty good. And I have to say that though Shadow in the Cloud is definitely a very flawed film, it is much better than what we usually get around the first week of January. I had a really fun time with Shadow in the Cloud overall. There's a lot of things I really do enjoy about it, but we're just getting to right now, starting off with the cast. And I'll just say right now, I think for the most part, that is definitely one of the best things about this movie. I think the cast overall does a really good job here. Easily, though, I think the person that holds this entire film together has to be Chloe Grace Moretz, who I just think does a phenomenal job in this role. This is one of her best roles in quite a bit, mainly because Maud Garrett is a very mysterious role. We know so little about her, and yet we are so endlessly compelled by her, and that's because of the way that Moretz plays this role. You know, throughout the film, she starts to reveal more and more layers of this character, and it can be hard to pull that off when you are playing someone that to the audience is very much is relatively unknown, you know, someone that the audience is learning more and more about. But I think Moretz really does a great job with that here. You really do buy her in this role. When certain revelations come up, it really does work as well, and I just thought overall she held this entire film together very nicely. She was very likable in the role. She, I think, really worked as this character. You really understood a lot of what Maud was kind of going through when these revelations end up happening. And for me, I think this was probably one of her best performances in a while. I don't really feel like she's been utilized very well lately, and I feel like this is definitely one of her better roles. I think she carried out this film very well. The rest of the cast also does the best with what they can here. You know, this is definitely a talented ensemble. You got Taylor John Smith, Nick Robinson, Callan, Mulvey, Beulah, Coll. All of them are good in the movie, but again, it really is Moretz that holds this entire thing together. Now let's get to the directing and the writing, because that's the thing I think that a lot of people are really going to talk about. The directing here by Rosanne Liang, it's very unique, to say the least. This is not at all your typical World War II film, because yes, the film definitely is in a historical setting, but the tone is not really what you expect. At some points, this tone is a very serious sort of character study where we are slowly learning details about Maud, and it can be a really good drama in that way, you know, where she's kind of like in this enclosed area, and, you know, with people that don't really know a lot about her, but are starting to find out more about her, and you can see how intriguing that is. But then on the other hand, it's this really wacky and honestly kind of dumb, like, creature feature with this, you know, with some sort of gremlin on board, and her trying to do what she can to get this gremlin off of it. So it does go between those two tones very well, but I think it really does work for this film, because by incorporating both tones, it helps this film stay fresh. It helps this film stay different, and I think it really does work overall. I think Liang put a lot of effort into making this as fun as she really can. She never takes it too seriously, and that's what I definitely did appreciate about about it, and the film is just a lot of fun to watch. There's a lot of style that she ends up implementing here, and I was overall very impressed by her directing. I'm not too familiar with her as a director, but after this film, I really hope I am, because I think she definitely does have a lot of talent for sure. The writing, I think, is also mostly really well done with this movie. Now, I will say right off the bat, a lot of people are going to be hesitant when it comes to the writing because of who's on board. Max Landis, yes, did do the initial screenplay for this film, but that draft has since been heavily rewritten, and at this point, he really is not involved with this aside from the Writers Guild having this role where because he was once involved, he needs to get some sort of credit for it, but it's really not his script. It is very much Rosanne Liang's version, and thank God for that, because I think the script we have is one that is really good, especially when it comes to Maud as a character. Again, she's very much a blank slate to the audience. We know so little about her. We know that she's going on to this bomber. She has some documents that are with her, and she's kind of stuck in this one area of the plane, but she also seems to be the smartest person on board. She's the only one that notices that there's something wrong, that there's someone else on board, and that they need to do something about it. And so we're immediately, intrigued by her in that way, because we don't really know what's going on. But then when the details are revealed, the film does a really good job of peeling back that curtain, and it really starts to make a lot more sense of her character. Certain actions that she did in the film, or certain things that she did earlier that you might not have understood, they really do start to come together, and I thought that was very well handled overall. I really enjoyed the way the screenplay was written here, and I found Maud to be a really well-written character who went in some directions that I really was not expecting. There were a lot of things they did with her that I was not expecting them to do, and I definitely really did appreciate that. So the first act of this movie, it's very slow-moving in that way. It's a lot of just, you're on this plane. I think, having the whole film in just this one location, it's very bold. We don't really leave this plane throughout the majority of the movie, and I thought they did a really good job with that. The third act of this film goes absolutely bonkers, and it basically becomes like a B movie of sorts, and for some, that's where the movie is going to lose them, but for me, I think it absolutely worked, because the film very much earned it. You can tell in the film, things are just a little strange, things aren't seeming in the way that they should, and when we get to that third act, yes, it's ridiculous, yes, it's crazy, yes, a lot of it doesn't make a lot of sense, but goddamn, I had a really fun time with it, and I thought it really did end up paying off. So I think the film does some really good, has a really nice balance of some really good character work, but also knowing when to just have fun and let loose, and never trying to take things too seriously, and that's something I definitely did appreciate when it came to this film, and I think that's something they did a very good job with. That being said, this is definitely not a great screenplay. There are definitely some moments that are very underwritten, and I'd say my biggest flaw with this movie, and the thing that does bring it down for me, is basically every other character besides Maud in this film. Honestly, did not like them really at all. Kind of found some of them very insufferable, and it's not because the characters on paper are bad, it's the way in which they're executed in this film. The characters in this movie, first of all, besides Maud, we don't really see them a lot. We'll see like a shadow of them, or like a quick shot of like what they look like, but for the most part, it's communicated over a radio, and the way they act towards Maud is very unflattering. They will often just like oogle her and make fun of the fact that she's a woman and that she can't do this, and it just becomes kind of annoying after a while, and there just isn't really a lot to their characters. And my other thing is, a lot of them, they just don't really have anything that helps them stick out as these characters. Like, for example, Nick Robinson's character, I couldn't really tell the difference between, say, him and someone like, someone like Benedict Wall. I couldn't really tell the difference of who was speaking in this moment. Was it John Witkowski? Was it, was it Byron Coll, or was it Nick Robinson that was speaking? I really couldn't tell. I don't think the film did a very good job with that, because it never really seems like these characters care all that much about Maud. You know, they don't really care much about her in this situation, and I just don't think the film did a very good job in giving them much to do. And I also just, again, did not like them as characters. I found them very unlikable in that way. The only character I found myself sort of attached to is Taylor John Smith. Where they end up going with him, I actually kind of liked. I thought it worked for the story, and it gave a little bit more of a purpose to what they ended up doing. But, like, besides that, I just was not a fan of the other characters in this movie, and I really think they should have spent more time on giving them at least some sort of significance besides just being misogynistic towards Maud, because after a while, it really starts to wear thin, and it started to get very repetitive for me in that way. That's why I was glad that the third act really kind of changed things up. And once we eventually get that reveal of, like, who Maud really is, thankfully that does start to go away. But for a while, it was pretty rough, I'm not gonna lie. And that was something that did bring this film down a few notches for me, I would say. But overall, I think this is a pretty good screenplay. I think it definitely is a very compelling film in that way, and I think there's definitely a good amount of stuff to invest yourself in. Now, in terms of cinematography, again, this film is not the greatest. It definitely does look cheap. The effects, are not that great either. But the design of the creature is actually really good. Like, the way this creature looks, they did put some significant effort into it, and I was actually pretty impressed. I was expecting the creature to look kind of shitty, but I actually thought it looked really good, and it looked believable in this setting, and I thought they did a good job with that. But yeah, anytime that Chloe Grace Moretz is, like, outside of the plane, it's very unconvincing and really, really horrible looking. But again, it's one of those things where I'm able to overlook it because it is just so silly and it doesn't take itself too seriously. But it is worth knowing that cinematography-wise, aside from the plane, which, like I said, I think the film is really well done when it's just when you're in that plane all by, just with Chloe Grace Moretz, you feel the claustrophobia there. You feel that she's only limited to a few amount of things. She doesn't even know what's going on the other side of the plane. I think that's a fun idea. But once she's outside of it, it definitely does look a little subpar, to say the least. It could definitely look a lot better, and it's definitely one of the weaker points of this movie. But I think overall the cinematography is fun for the most part. I think the World War II setting also was very well implemented. I think definitely the, costumes of that, the costume setting and things like that, all of that is really good. And the creature is legitimately threatening. Like, you definitely do feel uneasy watching this creature, not knowing what it's really trying to do, what its actual sort of method is. A lot of people have compared to, like, that Twilight Zone episode, and it's very similar to that because, just like that episode, there really isn't much Maud can do in this situation aside from try to steer away from this creature, even though nobody else really seems to believe her because obviously they're not taking her seriously in that way. And so I think that definitely added a bit of fear and a bit of intrigue that I think the film otherwise would not have had. So I very much enjoyed the creature. I think it definitely added to the film rather than detracted from it. Again, other people might feel differently, but for me, it really did work, and I liked what we ended up getting here. The score to this film, I also really enjoy. It's very synthy. It's almost like an 80s type score, but I think it really does work because the film is clearly trying to be like a throwback to like B-movies that would come out in the 80s, and I think it really does work with what they were trying to do here. And the editing, I do think the film is a little bit too short, I will say. I think that because of the fact that the film is only 80 minutes, there's only so much they're really able to do with this premise, and especially, like I said, in the first hour, it does start to, like, the first, 30 minutes, it definitely does start to wear thin a little bit. But like I said, once we get to those reveals and once things really kick off, the film really takes off from there. I think the film definitely becomes a lot better. So look, Shadow in the Cloud, it's not the most coherent film in the world. It definitely does feel a little bit uneven in some areas, and I do think there are some things that definitely could have done better with, but a strong performance from Chloe Grace Moretz, some really strong directing from Roseanne Liang, and a really interesting spin on a World War II story is really what elevates this film overall. I like the fact this film is trying to be something different different. It is trying to be something weird, and I think it really did go for it, and in the end, it did win me over. I wish there were some things it could have done better, but considering what we do get in January, this is legitimately a decent time overall, and I do think it is worth watching, and especially for the first film in January, like, that's a fucking miracle that I can say this film is even halfway decent in that way. So because that, I am going to give Shadow in the Cloud overall a B-. But over, guys, to my review of Shadow in the Cloud. Let me know what you guys saw this movie relative to your thoughts, and we'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.